Reflecting on my mornings, they were filled with routine thoughts, but nothing stood out more than the time I spent with my family. My work week was often chaotic and overwhelming, but weekends were sacred. They were my chance to focus on what mattered most, time with my daughter and mother. Saturdays became a beacon of hope amidst the busyness. Growing up, family was a constant foundation. My dad always reminded me that work wasn't everything, and it's the small moments with loved ones that truly shape us. I carried that lesson into my own life. The thought of laughter-filled afternoons with my family kept me grounded, even if I didn't realize it at the time. As I started my day, my mind was already on the weekend. It was Friday, and with just one more day of work, I was excited for the time I'd spend with my 4-year-old daughter Jana and my mom. My wife Jenny was traveling for work and wouldn't be back until Sunday night, so it was just me and Jana. After dropping her at kindergarten, I went to work, expecting to finish uploading a course catalog by noon, but I was done by 10:30. Arriving home to an empty house, I had a few hours before picking Jana up. I grabbed a sandwich and started packing for the weekend. While juggling packing and eating, I dropped a shampoo bottle that rolled under the bed. As I retrieved it, I found a small book, Jenny's journal. After debating whether to read it, my curiosity won. The journal entry was from April 20th, 2007. Jenny wrote about feeling trapped and fearing the consequences of her actions. She described how her boss accused her of missing money from the accounts she managed and offered a way out if she became his personal assistant. As I continued reading, my heart raced, shaken by Jenny's raw honesty. I was stunned by what I was reading in Jenny's journal. She continued, describing how her boss, Mr. Butcher, offered her a new job with more pay and responsibility, promising to help her out of the financial mess. He assured her she wouldn't be handling money and could repay him over time. It seemed too good to be true, but she accepted the offer, hoping it would resolve the situation. I leaned back, trying to process her words. Jenny had kept all of this from me. She explained how Mr. Butcher planned to cover for the missing money by claiming it was found in another account, clearing her name. When she told me about her promotion, she didn't mention the missing money, wanting to handle it on her own. As I turned the page, the situation grew worse. Jenny described moving into her new office, which was connected to a private lounge near Mr. Butcher's. She noticed odd looks from coworkers as rumors spread about her new role. Later, Mr. Butcher called her into his office to explain her duties, which included typical assistant tasks, but also accompanying him to events and dressing to his standards. The dread in me deepened. Jenny recounted how Mr. Butcher insisted she dress provocatively, with shorter skirts, no pantyhose, and no bra, claiming it was necessary to represent him and the company. If she didn't comply, he threatened to end their agreement and report her for the missing money. Jenny's words blurred in my mind. This wasn't the woman I knew, yet somehow she had been trapped in this nightmare. She described how she reluctantly complied, wearing a revealing outfit to work the next day. Mr. Butcher called her into his office, complimented her appearance, and checked to ensure she was following his dress code, asking if she was wearing a bra. She confirmed she wasn't. I could barely keep reading, overwhelmed by the realization of what Jenny had endured. Jenny's journal continued. He told me to unbutton my blouse. I hesitated, but his expression hardened, and he said I had no choice. Embarrassed, I unbuttoned my blouse. It wasn't open enough for him, so he told me to lift my skirt to prove I wasn't wearing pantyhose. Again, I hesitated, and again, he pressured me. I reluctantly lifted my skirt, and he simply said, "Beautiful," before telling me to leave it raised. After a moment, he said, "Get dressed and go back to work." I could barely believe what I was reading. Jenny had been humiliated every day. She wrote that each day the wardrobe check continued, and by Monday it escalated. He demanded she remove her blouse and skirt, leaving her in tears, but he kept pushing. By Friday, she was completely undressed for his inspection. The following Monday, he went further, saying it was her job to make him happy. He demanded sex, threatening Randy and Jana if she refused or told anyone. Jenny said she tried to resist, explaining that she loved her family, but he didn't care. He gave her until the next morning to decide. At home, she cried, debating whether to tell me, but chose to handle it herself. I remembered that time, realizing how blind I had been. The next day, after another degrading wardrobe inspection, she gave in to his demands, agreeing to his terms. He wanted a taste, but she backed away in fear. He threatened her again, saying if she ever hesitated or disobeyed, she would regret it. After circling her like a carnivore, he told her to get dressed and go back to work. This was the nightmare she had been living, and I hadn't seen any of it. Tears filled my eyes. Jenny had been trapped in a nightmare, and I had no idea. She wrote, "He called me into his office, motioned for me to sit on his lap, and started rubbing my back. He said I had to be enthusiastic and enjoy it, never fake it. He said I had to give him a head that evening. I felt sick." She continued, "That night, I stared at Randy while he made dinner, hating myself for cheating on him. I went to bed early, crying. The next day, Lloyd called me in again and told me to strip. He took me right there, and I cried again after. I felt like I was on a road to hell with no way out." The horror deepened as she described having sex with Lloyd repeatedly over the next few weeks, becoming numb to the guilt. Then she wrote about an even darker turn. "One day, the internal auditor, Carl, was in Lloyd's office. Lloyd told him how great my heads were and that I should demonstrate. I refused, so Lloyd played a video of us having sex. He said he had recorded everything and would send it to Randy, my parents, and the staff if I didn't comply. When Carl returned, I had no choice." Jenny described how things spiraled from there. She was forced to service other executives and became an object passed around. She wrote, "Lloyd told me I was now available to all the executives and potential clients. I had become the company's office hooker. I sat on the bed, stunned, trying to process it all. My wife, my Jenny, reduced to this." Her journal continued, "I'm writing this to document how I became the Thompson Company hooker. Maybe one day this record will help me get out of this mess. I know Randy would divorce me and take Jana if he found out. I hate myself for hurting him, but I was manipulated and didn't see it. Now I'm in too deep to stop. I just want to protect Randy and Jana. God help me and forgive me." The overwhelming betrayal and loss hit me hard. Jenny had been manipulated, trapped, and felt there was no escape, all while trying to shield our family from the truth. I closed the journal, realizing my shirt was soaked in tears. I hadn't even noticed them falling. Anger and pain surged through me. I wanted to scream, hit something, and strangle Butcher, or even Jenny. At the same time, I felt like dying. Without thinking, I made my way to the bathroom and threw up the peanut butter and banana sandwich I'd eaten earlier. After rinsing my face in the shower, I went back to the bedroom, picked up the journal, and straightened the wedding picture I had knocked over. I stared at Jenny's beautiful face in the photo, thinking about how she used to look like a princess to me. I touched the glass, then set it down. Just as I reopened the journal, the phone rang. It was Jana's school. I had completely lost track of time. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, I said, feeling guilty. I quickly gathered my things, tossed them in the car, and headed to the school. Jana was upset at first, but softened when she saw me, giving me a big hug. A tear fell on her back as I held her. I took the long way to my mom's house to think. When I arrived, Jana was asleep, so I carried her upstairs. I told my mom I'd start on her to-do list. Ever since Dad died, I'd been the one to help her around the house. I worked late into the night, my mind consumed by what I'd read. I kept wiping away tears as I cut branches in the backyard. I'd only read one journal entry from 11 months ago, but if this had started back then, what more would I find? I wasn't ready to face it. After dark, Mom came out and sat with me. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. I broke down in her arms, crying like a little boy. When I finally calmed down, I told her, "I found out something about Jenny that makes me think we can't stay together. I'm furious, but I love her. I know I need to do something, but I don't know if I'm strong enough." Mom, ever calm, said, "Randy, you're a good man. You'll do the right thing, whether it's forgiving her or moving on. But whatever you do, don't hurt Jana. She needs her father. And remember, I'm here for you." Her words gave me something more to think about. "Thanks, Mom. I'll make sure Jana isn't hurt." We walked back to the house together, and I went to check on Jana. March 15th, 2008, Saturday. I barely slept and felt awful. Sitting on the bed, I watched the sun rise and smelled Mom's fried apples pulling me downstairs. "Morning," I said. "Good morning. I could hear you tossing all night. Just eat and figure it out," she replied. "Thanks, Mom. After I finish up today, can you watch Jana? I want to walk to the old grotto. I won't do anything stupid. I just need to be alone and think." "Okay, but be careful. Jana and I will have a great day." After lunch, I finished Mom's tasks and grabbed Jenny's journal and a couple of beers before heading to the grotto, my childhood thinking spot. It was a peaceful place where I used to clear my mind. Sitting there now, I opened the journal and took a long drink. The entries mostly listed the men Jenny slept with, what she did, and how many times, with occasional notes about how good it felt. Her tone became more casual as the entries went on, but the content was horrifying. I reached an entry from October 20th, 2007. This past week was incredible. Friday, Lloyd said we were delivering bonuses to the salesman. On Monday, we visited the Western Region office. He gave them their bonuses and said their extra reward was 2 hours with me. All but one of the men looked like dogs waiting to pounce. I stopped, trying to breathe. This was worse than I'd imagined. I forced myself to keep reading. I went to the hotel, and one by one they came. The first man and I had sex, the second only wanted a head, and by the third I was exhausted. When the department manager showed up, I was completely drained. That night I slept with Lloyd, too. She went on, describing the next few days where she repeated this routine with more salesmen. By the end of the week, she had slept with multiple men and even earned $400 in tips. Her words, "I enjoyed it." My fists clenched as I read her casual tone. She wrote how, despite enjoying the acts, she felt awful afterward, like two different people. The work version of her who did what she was told, and the real her, a loving wife and mother. She admitted she felt numb while working, but full of remorse when it was over, calling herself a hooker. It was painful to read how Jenny had split herself in two, navigating between her work life and family life, all while carrying this unbearable burden. I put the journal down and stared at the gorge, briefly thinking this would be a perfect place to end it all. But then I realized, why should I suffer for what Lloyd Butcher and Jenny did? They were the ones in the wrong. Jenny's writing sounded less remorseful and more like she enjoyed everything she was doing. Did she enjoy it more than being with me? I'd have to ask her when she got back. By Sunday, I decided I would confront her. If she lied or didn't tell me the truth, I'd take Jana and move in with Mom. Divorce would be too easy for what she did to us. And on Monday, I'd deal with Lloyd Butcher. As I read on, Jenny's journal described more of her exploits. A manager's-only Christmas party, a New Year's event where over 20 people, both men and women, used her, entertaining clients throughout the year, and even sleeping with the police chief and deputies as payment for the company. She described a wild management retreat where she performed with dancers in a way people would never forget. Her writing showed a split personality. At home, she seemed like the woman I knew. But the other side was horrifying. Her last entry was from just a week ago, and I knew she was probably at it again this weekend. I couldn't stand to read anymore. I closed the journal, leaned over the gorge, and threw up. Then I lay down in the grass and cried, overwhelmed with disgust and misery. I felt sorry for myself. How could I have not known? Looking back, maybe there were signs, but I never doubted Jenny. She always told me when she had a problem. Maybe she didn't see this as a problem. We never fought. She did her part at home, and she was a great mother. Sure, our sex life had slowed, but I thought it was due to her hard work. Now, I wondered how many times I'd been unknowingly cheated on. Jenny had always been easily manipulated by men. Her father controlled her life until college, and then she dated a guy who was just as domineering, using her emotionally and sexually before tossing her aside. I met her after she'd been fired because the restaurant owner was secretly photographing her in the bathroom. She was too trusting, especially with men, and I hadn't paid enough attention to the men around her. Hindsight really does suck. March 16th, 2008, Sunday. As we left, Mom walked us to the car. "Randy, let me know what happens and don't do anything reckless. I trust you'll figure it out. I love Jenny, but if half of what you told me is true, she's not the same person. Just remember, you've got Jana. I'll call Mom." Jana and I spent the afternoon playing in the backyard. By the time she went to bed, she was exhausted. I grabbed a few beers and waited for Jenny to get home. At 9 o'clock, she walked in, suitcase in hand. "Hi, honey. How was your weekend? Did Jana behave?" she asked. I looked at her and said, "Not as good as yours. I only got screwed by one person. You probably had dozens." She stared at me in shock. "What are you talking about? I worked all weekend. Now I come home to this." I grabbed her journal and threw it across the room. It nearly hit her and shattered the china cabinet. She froze, staring at the wreckage. Slowly, she picked up the journal from the broken glass and walked outside. I watched from the window as she sat on the swing, clutching the journal and sobbing. I left her alone and opened another beer. When she came back inside, she sat across from me, placing the journal on the table. Her face was red, mascara running down her cheeks, and she spoke in a broken voice. "Now you know. What are you going to do?" "I haven't decided yet," I replied. "But it'll be big." "Are you going to divorce me?" she asked. Like I said, I don't know yet. She looked at me and said, I'm almost relieved you know. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you or Jana. I'm tired of the Zex, the lies, and the control. I just want to go back to being a normal mom. I'm sorry, Randy, for everything. Please talk to me. I felt both anger and pity. I read your journal, everything. I just have one question. Was this weekend more of the same? She lowered her head. Yes, I thought so. But did you do it voluntarily and did you enjoy it? She hesitated. It was a management retreat. I had to be there. Yeah, as the part of the team that's always on her back. She didn't respond, just stared at the table. I pressed on. You didn't answer. Did you enjoy it? Did you want to do it? From what I read, you seem to be really into it, maybe more than with me. Is that true? No, she said. I didn't enjoy it more than with you, just differently. I love you, Randy. I never wanted to hurt you. I do enjoy the attention and Zex, but it's different with you. We make love. With them, it's just Zex. She hesitated. No matter what I say, I sound like a lying, cheating hooker, and I am. I won't deny it. I enjoyed it with others, but I hated lying to you. Is that what you wanted to hear? I'm not sure what I wanted to hear, I replied. But at least you're not lying now. I don't think you could even lie your way out of this. We sat in silence until she asked quietly, So, is there an us anymore? I don't see how. You chose this life over your family. I've been lied to for months. You abandoned Jana and me for your so-called clients. No, there's no us anymore. That ended the moment you got on your knees for Butcher. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. After a moment, I added, And speaking of Butcher, I'm going with you on Monday to strike the crap out of him while you clean out your desk. He may have blackmailed you, but you chose to stay in this mess. Everyone involved deserves to pay, but I'll start with him. I paused, letting my anger simmer. You know, during the Cold War, they had a term called nuclear response. Swift and devastating retaliation. If I could, I'd shove an atom bomb up Butcher's back and press the button. I want everyone involved to pay, and I don't care about collateral damage. But for now, I'll settle for knocking the hell out of him on Monday. Randy, don't do something stupid. He's powerful and could ruin you, just like he did me. Monday. One way or another, I'll end this. Now get out of my sight. You can sleep in the spare room from now on. Jenny ran from the room, sobbing, slamming the spare bedroom door. I grabbed a couple more beers, knowing I wouldn't sleep much, so I might as well drink until I passed out. March 17th, 2008, Monday. Jenny sat quietly as I drove her to work. She'd cried all night. I could hear her every time I got up. Her ID badge got us past the guard. Jenny went to her office, and I stormed into Butcher's office, ready to attack. Before I could get far, something grabbed me by the neck and slammed me to the ground. A huge security guard pinned me down with another holding my head. No matter how hard I struggled, I was stuck. Butcher leaned over me, smiling. I've been expecting you, he said. The guard called when you came in. These two are my personal guards. They'll do anything I ask. That includes breaking your neck or finding your daughter. As for your wife, she's mine now, my personal hooker. Try anything, and I'll gut you and dump your body. Then, your little Jana won't live to see second grade. Do you understand? All I could do was mumble through the rage and the crushing weight. I wanted to eliminate him, but I was outnumbered. Butcher leaned in closer. Let me show you what I mean. I heard him call for Jenny. Her voice trembled. Please don't hurt him, please, no! Butcher shouted. Shut up and get over here! Let's show your husband what you do for us! The guards lifted me into a chair, handcuffing my hands and feet, and gagged me. I was facing Butcher and Jenny, with the guards holding me in place. Now, Jenny, strip and get on your knees, Butcher demanded. She hesitated, looking at me, but after he whispered something in her ear, she began unbuttoning her blouse, tears streaming down her face. I struggled in vain to break free, but the lights went out. That's all I remembered. I woke up in a hospital, IV in my arm, my right arm in a cast, and could only see out of one eye. My mouth felt dry and useless. The chief of police entered the room and smiled. How are you, Mr. Brooks? We found your car in a ditch. It looked like you swerved to miss a deer. That's the official story, but we both know better, don't we? He leaned closer. Lloyd Butcher's my brother-in-law. He's helped me out, like letting me enjoy a night with your wife. When he called about you falling down the stairs, I took care of it. That's why you're off the road. He paused, letting it sink in. If you don't go along with our story, I'll plant some pills at your house and make your life miserable. Stay quiet and no one, especially your daughter, gets hurt. Got it? I tried to speak, but my jaw was wired shut. I could only glare. He patted my shoulder and left. March 19th, 2008, Wednesday. Jenny drove me home and helped me into bed. I had a broken arm, jaw, ribs, and bruises. I needed help, but I didn't want hers. I hadn't seen her since Butcher's office, and now she was silently taking me home. I didn't ask where she'd been. I didn't care. Neither of us spoke. She just looked sad. I couldn't talk, couldn't eat, just lay there listening to my mother's voice in my head, warning me not to do something stupid. Well, I did. And now look where I was. Jenny avoided me, and little Jana helped when I needed something to drink. I lay there, letting my anger grow, waiting for my body to heal, so I could finally do what I needed to do. March 22nd, 2008, Saturday. I managed to move to the living room by myself. Around 6 o'clock, Jenny came in, followed by the 2 guards who had stricken me, and then Butcher. He placed a small gift bag next to me. "It's a get-well gift," he said. "Some DVDs for you to watch while you recover. I know you'll enjoy them as much as we enjoyed making them." Jenny looked at the floor while he gloated. "Jenny, give me something to drink and stay in the kitchen until I call you," he ordered. She left, and Butcher sat across from me. "Here's what's going to happen, Randy," he began. "Jenny will keep working for me, but now she'll be available evenings and weekends too. She'll go where I tell her and do what I want. If you cause trouble, you know what can happen, maybe worse. So just stay quiet, be a good little husband, and don't make waves." I didn't speak, just glared at him with all the hate I had. "Good, we understand each other. Anything you want to say?" he asked. With difficulty, I managed. "Your goons stopped me from saying what I really think." "Oh, don't worry about them. Speak up," he mocked. I quoted, "I must not only punish, but punish with impunity." Butcher looked confused. "What's that supposed to mean? Speak plainly." "I'm going to make you and everyone pay for what you've done. I'll get you all. Mark my words." Butcher leaned in, smirking. "How are you going to do that? You can't even protect your wife." He called Jenny back in and taunted her, saying I wanted to play hero. Then he told her she had an appointment at the Crown Plaza with a client and to get ready. She went upstairs, and Butcher patted me on the head before leaving with his guards. An hour later, Jenny returned, looking beautiful, but sad. "I have to go. I don't know when I'll be back. Randy, I'm so sorry for everything. I never thought our lives would turn out like this. I love you and don't want to see you hurt. I'll try to make a deal with Lloyd so you can take Jana and leave. Please don't do anything until I see what I can do. I don't want them to hurt you again." Before leaving, she asked, "What did you mean by that quote to Lloyd?" "It's from The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. It means I will get my revenge on everyone who wronged me, swiftly and silently," I explained. She stared at me, tears in her eyes, knowing I meant her too. "I still love you," she said. "I hope someday we can heal and be a couple again. I want to believe we can." Then she left. She bowed her head and left. She didn't come home that night or for many nights after. By Tuesday, the bag of DVDs Butcher left was still sitting next to the chair, untouched. I had no interest in watching them. I already knew what she did from her journal. She told me it was against her will, but also that she enjoyed it. She lied, cheated, and hurt me, but I no longer cared. All I wanted was revenge on everyone involved, including her. Going back to how things were was impossible. I calmly hid the DVDs in the back of my closet, out of sight but kept for later. April 27th, 2008, Sunday. My injuries were healing, the bandages were off, and I could eat with only mild discomfort. Jenny came home around 6 a.m., exhausted, fully clothed, and collapsed into bed, something she'd been doing a lot lately. She was barely home these days. I logged her patterns, still planning my revenge. I had a plan in mind that would take down everyone responsible for my pain, including Jenny. I knew deep down that she was a sufferer too, but I didn't care anymore. She continued this life willingly, choosing her work over her family. Any chance of forgiveness or staying with her was gone. I just wanted to be far away from her. That evening, I was sitting by Jana's swing set when Jenny came outside. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey," I replied. She sat at the picnic table. "I've been busy. I'm really sorry for everything. I miss you and Jana. I know you don't care about me, but I still care about you. I haven't been able to get you out of this mess because Lloyd wants us to pretend to be a happy couple. How are you holding up?" I didn't want to talk or be near her. "I'll survive," I muttered. She asked, "Have you kept up the journal I read? It's important, but I can't tell you why." Yeah, I've kept it the best I could. Is it still under the nightstand? She asked. Yes. She looked at me, then asked, Would you like something to eat? She started crying, saying, That's the first normal thing you've said to me since this all started. Yes, I would love something to eat. We ate together as a family for the first time in over a month. Jana and Jenny talked, and I sat quietly. One dinner didn't make us a family again. We were just 3 people in the same house, sharing the same table for a moment. But I knew it wouldn't last forever. April 28th, 2008, Monday. I lay in bed, reviewing my plan. It was perfect. Once in motion, I'd be free of Jenny without worrying about Butcher. She would face the consequences, and I could take Jana and start over. Everyone who took advantage of Jenny would suffer. I made a call. May 7th, 2008, Wednesday. Jenny came home looking disheveled, as usual. Her hair a mess, makeup smeared. Sometimes her clothes were buttoned wrong or even torn. Once she came home without a blouse, claiming she lost it. She waved at me and went to shower. When she came back downstairs, I told her, Butcher called. He wants you to go to the Hilton and meet someone named Manny. Next time, tell him I'm not his messenger. I'm done. I handed her the note and went back to my chair. She left without a word. I sat in the dark and cried, the beer not helping. May 24th, 2008, Saturday. I heard Jenny throwing up from the bathroom. She came downstairs looking pale. Randy, I'm really sick. Fever, sore throat, body aches. I think it's the flu. I don't want you or Jana to catch it, so please stay away. Can you get me something for my throat and some Tylenol? Go back to bed, I said. I'll take care of Jana and get what you need. She nodded and went upstairs. I took Jana out for ice cream and stopped at the pharmacy. May 30th, 2008, Friday. I got up to take Jana to school, but Jenny had already left, her first time out since getting sick. The flu must have passed, or maybe Butcher forced her to work through it. Whatever the reason, I kept up the act as the devoted husband, not wanting another hospital visit. December 25th, 2008, Thursday. Summer and fall passed, and Jenny worked harder, often gone for days. She looked thinner and more worn out each time I saw her. We barely spoke. When she and Jana spent time together, Jenny would briefly smile, but it never lasted. We had a quiet Christmas. Jana was thrilled with her Barbie dolls and accessories. Jenny gave me a gold pen and pencil set, despite me saying I didn't want anything. I didn't get her anything. In the afternoon, Jana and I went to my mom's for dinner. Jenny wasn't welcome. Mom knew everything and refused to speak to her. If she could, Mom would have strangled her. We had a nice dinner, and Jana was happy with the Barbie doll Mom got her. I felt numb. February 13th, 2009, Friday. I was at my desk, updating the course catalog, when a man I didn't recognize knocked on my door. Mr. Brooks? Randolph Brooks? He asked. Yes, that's me. How can I help you? I'm Detective Archer from the State Police. Is your wife Jennifer Brooks? Yes, what's going on? Sir, I regret to inform you that your wife has been eliminated. I can explain on the way to the hospital. We need to leave now. I was stunned, unable to move or speak. The detective gently moved the phone out of my hand and said, Sir, I'm sorry for your loss, but you need to come with me. Can I notify someone for you? I need to tell my boss, and someone needs to pick up my daughter from school. I can't think. Between the two of us, we managed to contact my boss and arrange for a neighbor to pick up Jana. The detective then drove me to the hospital, explaining what had happened. Mr. Brooks, your wife's boss attacked her at her desk. Witnesses say he struck her repeatedly with a heavy object. Others pulled him off, but she never regained consciousness and died on the way to the hospital. We don't know the motive yet, but detectives are investigating. Do you have any information that might help? I just stared out the window, thinking about how I would tell Jana. At the hospital, I didn't have to view Jenny's body. Witnesses had already identified her. Instead, I filled out paperwork for her remains. I noticed I was using the pen she had given me for Christmas. Once everything was signed, I tossed the pen in the trash and sat, numb, watching General Hospital on the waiting room TV. The detective drove me back to work to get my car, and I went home after picking up Jana. I made her dinner, put her to bed, then called my mom to tell her about Jenny. Afterward, I sat with a beer, feeling nothing. February 16th, 2009, Monday. I took the day off to arrange Jenny's cremation. Mom came with me because I wasn't sure I could handle it alone. She had moved in on Saturday to help with Jana and me, saying she'd stay until things settled down. I never intended for Jenny to die like that. My plan was just to get away and let her suffer. Now I'd have to live with her pass away on my conscience. When we got home, I went straight to bed, and for the first time since I found out, slept peacefully. No dreams. Nothing. February 18th, 2009, Wednesday. I was packing up Jenny's bedroom when I found her journal again. I skimmed through it, hoping to find any mention of Butcher or our fake life as a normal couple, but it was just more entries about her affairs. I pulled out Detective Archer's card and called him. "Detective Archer here," he answered. "Hi, this is Randy Brooks. I found something important, Jenny's journal. You need to see it." "Actually, I was going to call you. We've had some major developments in the case. Can I come by this afternoon around 2? "That's fine," I replied. At 2:15, Detective Archer arrived. I introduced him to my mom, who had moved in to help, and we sat in the living room with water and oatmeal cookies. "Mr. Brooks, there's been a major development," he began. "Mr. Butcher was granted bail at $1 million on Monday, but that night, his wife shot and eliminated him. I was stunned, but stayed silent as he continued. The reason she eliminated him is tied to the next thing you need to know. Your wife tested positive for HIV. I froze. "I didn't know," I whispered. "The state health department will want to test you and your daughter. I also have to ask, when was the last time you had relations with your wife?" "It's been over a year," I admitted. "We separated in March, but stayed in the same house for Jana's sake. We weren't together as a couple anymore." "Understood. But you'll still need to be tested," Archer said. "Now, can you tell me why you separated?" "It's all here," I said, handing him the journal. "I found these DVDs too, showing her in action. She admitted to seeing someone else when I confronted her, but I didn't know the full extent until now. The journal details everything. She was involved with Butcher and many others. I don't want it in the house." Archer glanced at the journal, his eyes widening as he realized what it contained. "This will be helpful. The health department will need a copy to track down everyone she was involved with. We might have a bigger health crisis on our hands." He added, "The case against Butcher is closed now that he's dead, but his wife claims she got HIV from him, and based on what I've seen in the journal, he likely got it from your wife. So far, 3 people have tested positive, and we're just starting." I sat in silence as Detective Archer's words sank in. "There's one more thing," he added. "We found hundreds of DVDs in Butcher's office, showing your wife with other men and women. Between the journal and the videos, we should be able to track down everyone and get them tested." I stared at him, feeling tears well up. "Thank you, Mr. Brooks," Archer said. "I'll keep in touch." After he left, Mom turned to me. "Randy, you weren't entirely honest. You knew what Jenny was doing last year and said you couldn't do anything about it. You should have told him." "I couldn't, Mom. I already look weak. I didn't want the police thinking I couldn't stand up to Jenny. I did confront Butcher and it got me hospitalized. I was afraid that saying or doing anything would make things worse, especially for Jana." "Did Jenny threaten Jana?" "No, Mom, Butcher did. He said if I told anyone, Jana would get hurt, badly. I couldn't take that risk, so I didn't tell Detective Archer everything." Mom nodded. "What you went through this past year must have been hell. I'm glad you protected Jana." "Mom, I did what I had to do. I hated myself for it, but it's just the beginning. Just wait and see." March 9th, 2009, Monday. Detective Archer came by to tell me that Jenny's pass-away investigation had officially been closed. He also handed me a copy of the health department's preliminary report, which revealed the situation was worse than anyone expected. The HIV outbreak linked to Jenny could potentially involve hundreds of people. The health department referred to it as an HIV hotspot, while the local papers labeled it the Thompson epidemic. No matter what it was called, there was a serious outbreak with Jenny and Thompson incorporated at the center of it. The preliminary report noted the following. 1. Jenny had sexual relations with 411 identified individuals. There were others they couldn't trace. 2. All the identified partners were contacted and tested. Of those, 36 people tested positive for HIV. 3. The department was still tracking down other partners these 411 people might have had, and then their partners, and so on. 4. Due to HIV's incubation period, it could take 9 to 12 months to fully understand the outbreak's extent. 5. They had yet to determine how Jenny contracted the virus initially. What wasn't in the report, but I knew personally, was that Jana and I were not infected, which was a small relief amidst the chaos. All but one manager at Thompson tested positive. As a result, Thompson's corporate office shut down the local branch and laid off the staff. pending an investigation into potential criminal activity involving the management and employees. Somehow, the newspapers obtained the health department's findings, and it turned into a media frenzy. Every paper in the state reported on the surge in demand for HIV testing, and doctors' offices were overwhelmed with requests. While only the health department had the names of the 411 individuals involved, some people came forward to the press, telling exaggerated stories of how they were suffererized. Most of it was nonsense, and they pinned all the blame on Jenny. Even national news outlets picked up the story, and the media descended on the town in full force. I disconnected my phone due to all the threats. My mom took Jana to school each day because the school had barred me from entering, calling me a health concern. Reporters showed up at my door regularly, looking for an exclusive, but I stopped answering. I still went to work, but the constant stares and whispers made it unbearable. I did my job quietly and went straight home. Life's a witch, and then you die. April 2nd, 2009, Thursday. I got a call from my insurance company telling me they had settled Jenny's life insurance claim. I could pick up the check on Monday at the local office. Jana was the beneficiary of her $1 million policy, and that was just the beginning. Yesterday, I met with a local attorney who urged me to sue Thompson for Jenny's wrongful pass away. He explained that he had a strong legal interpretation and believed I had a good case. I didn't know much about the law, but I told him to go ahead since I had nothing to lose. He also suggested filing lawsuits against the 411 individuals listed in Jenny's journal. He admitted it was a long shot to get money from them, but at the very least, their names would become public record. Since the health department had kept the names confidential, he said Jenny's journal could serve as the basis for the lawsuits. I agreed. The publicity would damage everyone involved, and I wanted to sit back and watch it unfold. June 15th, 2009, Monday. My attorney and I met with Thompson's lawyers today. After giving my deposition the previous week, they had more questions, some of which were very personal. I answered them as best as I could, using the words my attorney had coached me on. By the end of the day, they made an offer to settle out of court for $500,000. My attorney was taken aback, but quickly responded with legal jargon and threatened to walk out. As their lawyers discussed among themselves, my attorney leaned over and whispered, "Their first offer can go 3 or 4 times higher. Let's wait for the next bid." We went back and forth for over an hour. In the end, I settled for $1.5 million. Naturally, my attorney took a significant portion of that amount. As we left the building, he smiled and said, "This is going to help us settle all of the other 411 individual lawsuits too. We should do well in the long run." I knew that when he said we, he mostly meant himself. December 25th, 2009, Friday. Jenna and I spent Christmas at Mom's, far from the chaos at home. It was another quiet holiday for Mom and me, but Jana loved the snow and her gifts. She'd outgrown Barbie and was now into video games. I discussed the idea of moving with Mom. Once the lawsuits were settled, I thought Jana and I could move somewhere far away where no one knew us, and we could start over. Mom liked the idea and said she might join us. I told her I'd start looking for places. December 31st, 2009, Thursday. Today marked a major turning point in my life. 2 significant things happened. First, we settled the last of the 411 lawsuits. Here's the breakdown. 1. I settled 244 lawsuits for modest amounts. 2. I dropped 99 lawsuits for personal reasons. 3. 11 lawsuits were dismissed in court. 4. 5 were thrown out on technical grounds. 5. 46 were dismissed due to the defendant's financial hardship from health issues. 6. 6 lawsuits went to trial, and I won all of them, with substantial monetary awards. In total, I received around $1.4 million from the lawsuits, though my lawyer took a large share of that. The second major event was that I sold my house. I quietly sold it as is to a real estate agent for a much lower price. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted to leave quickly and quietly. At the closing, I told the agent, "You own the house now, but I still have a few things left to take care of. Tomorrow, Goodwill will come by to take everything. Furniture, kitchen items, beds, everything. I'm not keeping anything. Too many bad memories. I've already sent ahead what I want to keep. Feel free to take anything you want before Goodwill comes. In the afternoon, a cleaning crew will come and clean the house from top to bottom. It's the least I can do. Also, someone will be by to pick up my other car. I sold it too. I can't drive 2 cars to my new home. By tomorrow, we'll be gone. You could say we're sneaking out of town in the middle of the night, and I don't care. We'll be long gone by morning." January 1st, 2010, Friday. I glanced back at Jana in the back seat and saw she was asleep among her toys. I looked down at the morning paper beside me, which featured a front-page story about a local reporter nominated for a Pulitzer Prize for his series on the Thompson epidemic. At least someone was benefiting from all this, I thought. A few days ago, the same paper reported these updates. 1. The number of confirmed HIV infections had risen from 36 to 54. 2. Another 107 people tested positive, likely through contact with those who had sex with Jenny. 3. One of Thompson's managers, who slept with Jenny, infected his wife and 2 of his lovers. 4. Around 200 divorce cases had been filed in connection with those named in the lawsuits. 5. Police had responded to over 150 domestic violence calls related to the lawsuits. 6. 72 restraining orders had been issued by spouses of the 411 individuals. 7. The state health department estimated healthcare costs for the infected would surpass $50 million. 8. All 12 executive managers, 6 department heads, and 23 employees from Thompson were fired, including the entire security staff. The remaining 35 employees were offered jobs at other branch offices. 9. The city fired the police chief and 2 officers, both of whom tested HIV positive. 10. No one had developed full-blown AIDS yet. 11. No one had discovered how or when Jenny was infected. 12. 2 people had been liquidated, and 2 others had committed self-destruction. We still had another 1,000 miles to go before we reached our new home. As Bob Marley said, "When one door is closed, don't you know another is open?" June 17th, 2010, Thursday. I hadn't felt this way in a long time. For years, I believed Jenny had torn away my ability to feel anything. But lately, I'd catch myself smiling occasionally, usually at something Jana said or did. She's the reason I've made it this far. God, I love that little girl. As long as she stays my little girl, I might get through all of this someday. But today isn't that day. I'm standing outside a funeral home, hands in my pockets, staring at the white door, too afraid to go in. Inside are the ashes of my oldest friend. We were born on the same day, grew up together, played and laughed together, and learned about life together. We even lost our pureness on the same camping trip, he with Sherry Marks and me with Donna Barnett. I think I got the better end of that deal. We were inseparable, even went to the same college, but then life took us down different paths. We stayed in touch, but never as close as we were as kids. Now he's gone, and I'm a wreck. I can't bring myself to go inside. I don't want to make a fool of myself in front of everyone, so I just stand here, hoping the ground will swallow me whole. As I stood frozen, the door opened. Smiling down at me was Mrs. Pellegrino. I hadn't seen her in nearly 12 years, and aside from a few extra pounds and some gray in her long black hair, she looked exactly as I remembered. Absolutely gorgeous. When I was a teenager, I used to lie in bed at night thinking about her. I'd close my eyes and picture her long black hair cascading over her broad tan shoulders, framing her delicate face. Her eyes were mesmerizing, and her smile could light up any room or make all my childhood worries disappear. I loved that woman, even though I knew it was wrong. After all, she was my best friend's mother, the same friend whose ashes now sat beyond the door she was holding open. Despite her smile, I couldn't move. I looked down, still praying the ground would swallow me. Then I felt her warmth, standing so close to me. I looked up and saw her beautiful brown eyes and broad smile, just inches away. "How are you, Randy?" she asked, her voice still as youthful as I remembered. "I'm okay, Mrs. Pellegrino," I mumbled, just having trouble getting my feet to move up the steps. "I had the same problem when I got here," she said softly. "It's not as bad inside as you think, really." She stepped closer and wrapped her arms around me. The mother of my dead best friend was holding me, trying to comfort me. I knew it was just that, comfort, but all I could think about was the warmth she radiated. I felt embarrassed, even aroused, and I couldn't believe that after all these years I still had feelings for her. But more than that, I was shocked to realize I could still feel anything. That alone was somewhat comforting. "Thank you," I mumbled into her hair. "You don't know what he did for me, how much he meant to me. I'm just so sorry he's gone. I miss him so much." We stood there quietly, just holding each other. She made me feel like maybe I could walk through that door and face what was inside. Slowly, she let go and looked into my eyes. "Randy, I have a question for you before we go in," she said, her face curious. "I need an honest answer." "Sure," I replied. Ask me anything. Yesterday, a lawyer came to my door, she began. She introduced herself and gave me an envelope. Inside was information about a trust fund. It seems someone set up a trust in my son's name for Joshua. The trust is for $1 million. $1 million, Randy. I asked the lawyer who was behind it, but she said the donor was anonymous, though I think she knows but can't tell me. My question is, did you have anything to do with this? Did you set up that trust fund in Portis's name? I looked her straight in the eye and told the best lie I've ever told. No, ma'am, I said. I don't know anything about it. She studied my face for a moment. I could tell she knew I wasn't being truthful, but after a moment, her expression softened, and she smiled that same beautiful smile. Thank you, she whispered. I didn't let on that I knew she was aware. I just smiled back. I don't know if you know, she said, but I'm Josh's legal guardian now. Portis was sick for 3 years, and before he passed, we arranged for me to adopt Josh. So now my grandson is my son. I'll use the trust fund to send Josh to the best schools and colleges, and if there's any left, I'll give it to him as a wedding gift. Josh wants to become a doctor, you know. He says he wants to find a cure for what eliminated his dad. I'm going to do everything I can to help him achieve that. I smiled and said, Mrs. Pellegrino, Anna, you're old enough now to call me Anna, she interrupted gently, stroking my cheek. Anna, I said, smiling wider. I think I'm ready to go in now. Will you walk with me? She turned toward the door, linked her arm with mine, and guided me up the steps that had seemed so impossible a moment earlier. Once inside, a man approached her and said they were ready to start the service. She turned to me, kissed my cheek, and said, Please stay after. I'd like to talk more. I want you to meet Josh. He's a good kid, and I think you'll really like him. She smiled and disappeared into the crowd, pointing me toward the visitor's book. I signed it and took a seat near the exit. The woman next to me handed me a box of tissues, which I gratefully accepted. I grabbed 6 or 7 just in case. A few minutes later, everyone sat down and a young man stepped up to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Today we are here to celebrate the life of Portis Emmanuel Pellegrino. We all know how he passed, how he suffered and succumbed to that modern plague, AIDS. But today we're here to celebrate how he lived. Portis was the kindest, most genuine man I ever knew. He was real, kind, and down to earth. In fact, no one called him Portis. We all knew him as Manny. That's when I lost it. I grabbed the handful of tissues I'd taken earlier and pressed them to my face. I cried.